I'm here at the Balboa Island Museum. We are here with Don Cook. It's 1 p.m. on April 7th. My first question for you would be, what is your earliest memory of the island?
Oh, I would say 1940.
What would be that memory? Would you share a little bit about your first encounter with the island?
Okay, well, my grandfather had a barber shop at 320 Marine Avenue, and he lived upstairs. His name was Jack Huckabee. Okay, and we came to visit him and liked it, and he had a place behind there that we rented. Okay. Next to the barber shop was a vacant space. So my mother and father opened a little business, I would say 1942 probably. They sold fresh squeezed orange juice that I had to squeeze, popcorn, and hot dogs.
Oh.
And seeing it was the war, you couldn't get candy. Everybody wanted candy. So my dad went to LA and found some black market candy. And he found something that was really hard to find. It was called double bubble gum.
Right.
And we sold those for a penny. I think the popcorn was a nickel, the orange juice was a dime, and 25 cents for the hot dogs.
Oh.
So that's where we all started. Then my dad bought a lot at 310 Marine Avenue for the ridiculous price of $400. Then he bought a prefabricated house because you couldn't buy any building materials.
Right.
He took the garage and put it on the front, which became the candy store. And we lived at that house all the way through my high school years.
With the prefabricated home, was it one of those box sets?
Well,
or
no, it just like they bought all the pieces and they had to have a contractor
I
build it.
see. Okay, pieced it
Yeah.
together. Fascinating. So what was it like moving to the island in those early 40 years during the war? What was the feeling
Well,
of the island?
the place was crowded. We had what we call Bow Week, you
Right.
know, and everybody came down and business was real brisk. And that's where the no parking started. Yeah, and so then he opened the candy store. They closed the little place across the street here where they sold orange juice. And there was a gal named Mildred Decker in Santa Ana that made custom candy. She had a little candy factory. And we sold her candy. And I made peanut brittle and fudge. And I was like, I guess, 9 years old, 8 years old. We had a slab that we made it on. And I made the white fudge, the regular fudge, and peanut brittle. So one day, my mother gave me some bananas. She says, put them in the refrigerator. Okay. A couple of days later, she says, where are the bananas? I said, well, in the refrigerator. She said, no, they aren't. And I said, oh my God, I put them in the freezer. So I was making hot fudge and stuff, so we peeled one and dipped it in the fudge, you know, and God, it really tasted good, you know. And then we did that again the next day or two. And so my dad had the idea, well, why do people buy these, you know? So then we would take a banana before we froze it, cut it in half, put a stick in the bottom, and put it on some wax paper and freeze it. And then my dad would go to LA to buy stuff for the candy, and he found some hot chocolate that would actually get hard when it got cold. And that's where we started dipping the bananas. And I think they sold them for 25 cents or something like that. But this guy in Balboa on the mainland, about the same time, started selling bananas. Now, we don't know whether he got the idea from us or whether it was his own idea. But the people across the street here that claim that they didn't have bananas. All they had was a Balboa bar and whatever. But I stopped in there 6 months ago and talked to people and told them what was really going on.
Wow. What did they say in reaction to that? But just were they excited to hear about the original story?
Yes.
Like how it formed? And
Yes. And then my mother's brother, was his name Kenny Nichols, Nichols, opened a business across the street called the Cottage Waffle Shop. And there's a restaurant there still. They ran that for several years and sold it to Bob's Big Boy.
How neat.
Okay. And that's kind of the history of our family here. They had the barber shop, the Cottage Waffle Shop, and the candy store.
Did you have a personal favorite from all those business ventures?
Well, when they started, there was a restaurant, the Village Inn was there, and there was a place called Dodd's Malt Shop in the 200 block on this side of the street, about halfway down. That was the only place for food on the island. And then when they opened the waffle shop, it started out for a breakfast only. Then finally they ended up with hamburgers and soups and all kinds of stuff. And my folks sold the business and they moved to Leisure World. And the people they sold the house to was a doctor in the back, and I rented it for a while. And then ended up renting a garage apartment behind the Jolly Roger that belonged to the Hershey people who had the market.
Right.
And that's where I met my wife. But there's a lot of history that we used to go when we were teenagers to the JR, Jolly Roger. That was the hangout. Well, I'm, I don't know, 13 or 14. And John Wayne had come in once or twice a week. Andy Devine, Elizabeth Taylor, Jimmy Cagney, Humphrey Bogart, they all came to Jolly Roger. Well, the little island at this end of Balboa Island was named Cagney Island.
Yes.
That was the original name of it. And he had a schooner out there. And we'd go into the Jolly Roger in the morning for coffee. That was the thing to do. Anyway, John Wayne says, "Hey, Sonny." Everybody was Sonny. "What do you do with that coffee?" I said, "Well, I'm going to drink it." He said, "No, you're not. You're not allowed to drink coffee. Bring this kid orange juice." That was my deal. "Yes, Mr. Wayne." You know, he was very, when he spoke, you listened. And yeah, and they were all in and out of that place all the time.
Was it odd to encounter that celebrity culture that often for you, or is it
No,
just
well,
part of living
we were
here?
in awe of those people, you know,
Right.
being teenagers. And of course, we caused a lot of trouble when we were teenagers, racing up and down the street. There used to be a Shell station on the corner of Balboa and Marine, and a Union station at Park Avenue and Marine, because the fire station was here.
Right.
So we hung out at the gas stations. Kind of a fun life. Go swimming every morning, and the guy that was the fire captain here, his name was Zuby, his last name, and he was a very fine craftsman with wood. He made me a paddleboard. And so we paddleboarded around and had a good time.
He trained you how to do that
Yeah.
here in the area. Was that something that you did a lot of the water activities with friends then? You grew up learning from each other how to do all the water
Yeah,
sports?
you get home from school and go swimming. You know, on the weekends, the first day, everybody swim, 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 dive off the pier, have a good time. We would dive off the bridge, which they didn't like us to do. And one of our favorite things was to ride the ferry across in the summertime until they came to get the nickel, and then we jump over and swim. We're not paying a nickel. And I went to school with Seymour Beek. Oh, and by the way, my dad bought the property from Joe Beek. He was the original realtor or owner, I don't know what. But those are kind of my years on Balboa Island. I come back to visit once in a while. But I live in Laguna.
Do you have a favorite Balboa Island story that brings back fond memories of your childhood, or perhaps an inner child within you?
Oh, Lord. Just getting in all kinds of trouble, especially at Halloween. We would build bonfires in the street and, you know, wild stuff. And we only had 1 or 2 police officers in those days, and we'd harass them and cause trouble. We'd take the manhole covers off in the alley and then run down the alley, and they'd run into the manhole covers and mess up their tires. You know, typical teenage boys. 4 or 5 of us ran around together. But it's fun to come back and see where the hardware store is, and I don't know what's at the Jolly Roger now. There used to be a drugstore on the corner at Park Avenue. There was a guy that lived right here somewhere named Raleigh Pulaski.
This is his house.
Was his house?
This is the house.
I went to school with Raleigh.
Yes, this is his home.
He has
They took this wall out here. That was a wall to the bedrooms. But
No
this was
kidding.
their home, their family home.
And the Hammonds, Mary Hammond, did you know her? They were in the corner house at Grand Canal. And George Newton lived next door, and I worked for him. And now I see his son Gary Newton all the time. He's a hot rodder. And don't see many of the people from Balboa Island anymore. Seymour Beek and Jim Edmondson.
Right.
That's about Joe Lozon. His dad had a place on Coast Highway in the Miracle Mile. They'd made studs and stuff for airplanes, and they moved that years ago.
Would you have any special holiday memories that relate to the island? I know a lot of the celebrations are huge for the community, but perhaps one of those, or more personal, annual celebration in your own household?
Well, one of the things that we used to do was a fun thing. We get on our bicycles and ride up. There was no Jamboree Road till after the Boy Scout Jamboree.
Right.
They bulldozed the road in, and it was dirt. And this was dirt here up to PCH. So we would ride up our bicycles and take our BB guns on Sunday and go shoot things we shouldn't shoot, rabbits and squirrels, you know. And one day on a Sunday we heard cars noises. And I'm, 14, 15. Well, we went over there, and there was an old World War II abandoned airstrip where Jamboree and Fordbrook is now. And there was a couple of hot rods, a motorcycle, and a quarter horse. And these guys were racing about 100 yards. Well, this went on all afternoon. They're switching back and forth, racing one another, and we're just loving it. And here come the Marines in a Jeep. This is private government property. You'll have to leave. So, okay, so everybody goes, we'll be back next Sunday. So we go back next Sunday, and we ride our bikes up there too. Now there's like 6 or 8 cars and 2 motorcycles. And here come the Marines. So they ran us off, but they said, we'll be back next week with the sheriff. So we expect you not to be here. So before we left, everybody exchanged phone numbers, all the adults, and said, hey, you kids want a phone number? Yeah, give us a phone number. So about a month, needless to say, we didn't go back. About a month goes by, and I get a call from a guy named C.J. Hart. You'll want to write that down. He had a garage on Harbor Boulevard and First in Santa Ana. And he says, we're going to try and organize a drag race, and I'm going to find some property. When I find it, I'll call you back. So he calls me, another 2 weeks go by. He says, we found an old abandoned taxiway at the Orange County Airport. And we're going to be all there on such and such a Sunday. So we went there. Now they had about 50 cars and 10 motorcycles. and they were racing a couple hundred yards, so they said, well, there was a little curve right at the start. This isn't any good. So they negotiated with the airport people. There was a guy named Creighton Hunter, C-R-E-I-G-H, Creighton Hunter, and a guy named Frank Stillwell who had a Harley shop in Santa Ana. They leased a straight taxi strip. It's where the main runway is now, okay? And they went down to the end of it, and it was dirt. And they drove the car back towards where the starting line was going to be, a quarter of a mile, and that's where the starting line was. That's how they determined it. It wasn't measured or anything. And right there was a little dip off about from this table down to the floor. And we would pair up and go, and then the flagman was down at the start line. Well, to make a long story short, that's the first drag strip in the United States. That's where it all started, and I was there.
Wow.
And they ran for 10 years, 1949 to 1959, and they lost their lease. And then every year, at some place in Santa Ana, we had a Santa Ana drag strip reunion. And a dinner and wives and everything, and all the old guys that used to race there. And at the end of the evening, they said, everybody stand up that was at the first drag race. Oh, maybe 25 people stood up. And then at the end of the meeting, they said, no, we want everybody to stand up was at the last drag race. About 5 guys stood up. Who was at both of them? I was the only one.
Oh, wow.
I was there every Sunday for 10 years.
Wow.
And my dad sponsored it all. I had to have a hot rod, and be one of the gang. So, and he paid. He got all excited. He loved it.
What kind of a hot rod did you have?
I had a 1934 Ford Coupe.
Oh, yeah.
We called it a light coupe. Anything up to 1935 was light coupe. Anything after that was heavy coupe. And mine had fenders, and I held the record for 9 years at 126 miles an hour. And they still have that board somewhere with all the records on it. And they had an old hearse that they had parked over on one side where they did their announcing from, and on the other side where the car parked, they had lined up telephone poles on the ground end for end for the whole quarter mile. People would just pull right up and park and watch, not thinking anything about safety or anything.
Sure.
Of course, they were going 100 miles an hour, and then when it started, ended up somebody went 150 and 10 years later. And then after that, the drag strip at Fontana, one at Saugus, one at Colton, then later on Long Beach Lions drag strip. So then it all started there.
Wow.
And it actually started a month before when the Marines kicked us out.
Wow.
So I should have wrote some of that. Next time we talk, I've got a license plate that says that I've never taken the paper off of it. Santa Ana drag strip, and I've got several trophies. I used to get a trophy every Sunday, and then we had so many that Hart would buy them back for 50 cents a piece, so we'd sell them back. And I still got some of the tickets. They charged 50 cents to get in.
Oh, that's so cool.
And this guy, Frank Stillwell, was kind of he was on the gate, and he took the money. And C.J. Hart and Creighton ran the racing. Well, it was kind of known by all the guys that it was 50 cents into the box and 50 cents into his pocket. So he was probably pocketing half the money. But we figured out what we do. My buddy had an Oldsmobile sedan, and we'd throw 4 or 5 kids in the trunk. One guy paid 50 cents to get in. We'd drive down the other end of the drag strip and get out. Those are 15-year-old stunts.
Right.
We did the same thing at the drive-in movie.
Yeah.
It's neat.
So,
In what ways how did the island become home to you? You were here in one of its earliest developments, and you had family connections, but when did that actually, would you say, happen?
what was that now?
When did the island become home
When did we move in?
Yes, like when did that connection
Oh,
happen for you
I would say
personally?
1940, 41, when we moved there at 320 Marine.
Did you automatically connect with the community? Is that just instinct?
We
or is
didn't
it-
do much, it was not much going on back then, you know, with the war.
Right.
And one of my good friends was running the Shell station, and another guy named Dick Kramer had the 76 station down there. And of course, I was kind of shocked to see that they moved the fire station, you know.
Right.
There was a market called Boardman's Market, did anybody ever tell you that?
No.
At the end of this street, on this side,
Mhm.
they had a market, Boardman's Market.
No, no one's mentioned it.
And across the street, next to the restaurant where it is now, was a drugstore.
Mm.
Upstairs over the drugstore, my father rented and had an electronic assembly plant with 10 girls working in there.
Oh, wow.
And my first wife and I worked for him when we were our teenagers. And he did that for about 10 years. Built electronic parts for the war.
Wow. Huh. We've heard from an earlier account that the island transformed with the war, with Marine families coming here and then they stayed. Did you notice that shift and just more of a military presence? You're sharing in the story how they were controlling, the area, but what was that like being here in a place that's so quaint and just, was that?
It's nice because it's so quiet and so, low key,
Mm-hmm.
except for the summer months,
Mhm.
Everything, the rents, what they charged a month for rent in the winter is what they charged per week in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't afford to live here in the summertime. Well, that's the reason when people rented in the summer, they would bring a whole bunch of kids, and a whole 3 or 4 families, way overcrowded. Everybody's worrying about fires, and it was, you couldn't get up and down the streets with the fire truck.
Right.
It's tough. We're lucky we never had a real bad fire.
Certainly.
What most people don't know, I'm trying to think how old I was. I think I was in the 20s, 21, 22. It snowed here one night.
Mm.
The snow was over the curbs. It snowed about 6 inches deep, all over the island.
Do you know approximately what time that might have been? Just by general
Let me think. 67 or 68.
Fascinating.
My boss that I was working for lived on Apolline, and I thought it would be funny to make a snowball and throw it at his front door, but I broke his front window. And people, of course, the next morning when we got up, we're thinking we were going to go play in the snow. There's no snow.
Right.
It's probably by midnight or 2 in the morning, it warmed up enough to where.
Right.
But it wasn't hail, it was snow.
Yeah.
I don't know if many people knew that.
What year do you think it shifted from more of a vacation destination for the summer to more of a permanent community? When did you kind of notice that change?
It was a vacation when I came down to visit my grandfather. My folks lived in St. Louis, okay? And they thought they'd come out and visit. And they came out on Route 66. Of course, I think it was January, February, before I was born. And they left the snow, and they got out here, and it was a nice day like today in January or February, and they never went home.
Mm.
They stayed.
Wow.
And I was born in 1934.
Mm.
I had a younger brother, Gary, and then a much younger brother named Craig. And I think Craig was born after we moved. My folks went to Leisure World. I I lived in Costa Mesa for a while before going to Laguna.
Oh.
That's about it.
It's amazing that this is your home for all those years. It's quite a change in seeing it from its earliest days to now, and so
Well, we lived behind the candy store. It was a 3-bedroom house. And we lived, I had my own bedroom in the back. Well, my younger brother was born, and then they had a bunk bed in the other bedroom.
would you share about any favorite story you have about the celebrities you've encountered? You shared earlier about John Wayne. Was there any other interesting encounter you had with the other individuals around here?
We'd go and dive off the roof of the pavilion and do silly things. I went to grammar school on the peninsula. And then I went up to Corona del Mar for junior high, and then I graduated in '53 from Harbor High. And I got all into hot rodding then, and that was my whole life.
That's neat. Did you have any other life-changing events that took place here at the island?
Oh boy, just when the war was over, the big celebration, everybody was celebrating and
What was that like? What was the celebration culture?
I know my folks started giving out free candy to everybody. I had to.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's fun making peanut brittle and fudge. They had a marble slab,
Yes.
and they had popcorn down there and the frozen bananas.
How did you find out the war was over? How was that news broadcasted to this community? Do you recall?
Oh, no. They were just real good with everybody and here, and my uncle and aunt ran the waffle shop. He was just a jolly, good old guy, and she was kind of, I don't know, weird, different, I don't say. He was, Kenny Nichols flew with them. They had a group of people called the 13 Black Cats, and they flew Jenny's, the old biplane in the 20s
Oh, wow.
and the 30s,
Wow.
and performed all over the United States.
Wow.
And he was a wing walker. They would be a guy on each wing, and they'd come down swooping over the airport and grab stuff out of the two guys' hands. Of course, the airplanes were going 35 miles an hour, and going real slow. And they used to fly over the Coliseum when they had games. And he was a daredevil.
Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable.
My Uncle Kenny was in the submarine corps in the war, earlier war, and he was tattooed from top to bottom. Everywhere on his body he was tattooed.
Wow.
It's like today.
Yeah.
Right. It's more common. Was he stationed in the sub nearby? I know they had patrols during the war. They had some stations.
With the Harvard Patrol?
Sure, yeah, so with your uncle being in the submarine corps, was he ever in
No.
this particular region?
No. One thing I forgot to tell you, there used to be a flying A station over here. It was two brothers, Hans and Jack Broering, B-R-O-E-R-I, and that was one of my hangouts. A guy named Ralph Herman, who was their mechanic, taught me everything I know about engines and everything. He later went to work and did all the maintenance work for the harbor department over by the Balboa Yacht Club.
Mm.
And he's since passed away. And my brother Gary used to crew with a guy named Bob Yardley in the Flight of the Snowbirds. Well, Bob's mother, Dorothy, was one of the originators of the Balboa Bay Club.
Mm.
Wow.
So some of this stuff comes back, and some of it I forget, but
Do you have a favorite story about a business on Marine Avenue, including ones that don't exist today?
Marine Avenue?
Yes.
Oh, well, there was a guy named Dr. Seuss. He was my dentist. You know where Amelia's restaurant is?
Right. We just interviewed.
He was in the
Christina.
back there,
Oh.
right behind in the same building. And I don't remember when Amelia's had started, but she had that place forever.
Yes, one of our earlier
Yeah,
founders.
but, yeah, Doc Seuss, and then he moved down, his office was down in the 200 block, he had to go up some stairs up top.
Hmm. Wow. So with your banana stand, I have to ask because I watched the show Arrested Development on Netflix, and it's a really popular show about the Balboa Island culture,
Mhm.
Arrested Development, and how they established the banana stand and the family dynamic there. Do you have any reaction to the portrayal of the island on television shows like that? Because it's
Oh, I don't know where they get some of that stuff. You know, when you were here and lived it, why, it's just like I just spit that out about Raleigh Pulaski, and here we are.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. But you didn't know Mary Hammond or Bud Hammond?
Those names have not come across our desks.
Yeah.
Anne Broring, though, her name, I've got her name
Yeah,
written down here.
the Hammonds owned a sash and door company up in Los Angeles, called Hammond Lumber. It's not the Hammond Lumber, that's a lumber yard, they just had their own, and they did well. And George Newton, that lived next door, had a place called Aircraft X-Ray in Southgate, I worked for him. And spent a lot of time, we knew everybody that from the bridge down, and used to swim all there and dive off their piers. And there was some guy, I don't remember his name, he was a foreigner, dark-skinned, and he would swim every morning 1 lap of Balboa Island. And he had his real slow stroke. And you could watch him go down the canal, and soon enough he'd come back around, a couple hours go by, and then he'd get back out here at the bridge. I don't know his name. He taught me how to swim, though.
Wow, that's quite an expert to learn from with those
Yeah, well,
abilities.
I think probably Hawaiian, I would think. Something.
Wow,
Nice guy.
that's neat.
Unfortunately, most of the people have passed away, I spent a lot of time at Seymour Beek's house with his mother and father, and all of our little gang. We used to hang out there. This was before Buddy Ebsen's time, and had a lot of fun with the ferry boats.
It's wonderful, your story about the early development and your personal ties with your family being part of it as well.
My folks were just very conservative. They didn't drink, they didn't smoke, and I never smoked. And I had my first beer when I was like 20. I didn't. And all the guys I ran around with, it was the big deal to have you live in. You've seen the show with the Fonz?
Right.
That's the way it was here.
How cute.
That's just the
Happy
way it was.
days.
A couple of my buddies had the leather jackets, and they were, and we were called the boys.
How cute.
Yeah, and then we were the ones that raised on the island. Yeah, we used to take orange crates from behind our Hershey's Market and pile them on the little island bridge and set them on fire Halloween. Crazy stuff. Turn on the fire hydrants.
You're the pranksters of the town.
We never got, well, I did, I got in some trouble. I took my dad's car one night, unbeknownst to him, and went over and raced on the peninsula. Well, my claim to fame was I got a ticket going 125 miles an hour in the school zone. Of course, school wasn't in session, it was at night and everything. You know, they had to take me in and call my dad. And of course, I was surprised to him because he didn't even know I had his car. You know, boys will be boys.
Wow. Incredible, your connection with the early drag racing is, and so wonderful you can share.
Well, the drag racing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I drag raced all the way up till the last day they closed. And then I took 3 or 4 years off and built a dragster, top fuel dragster in 1963, and I raced that for about 5 years. And then it got to be where a lot of the big name guys got their parts for free, and we had to buy ours, and especially the tires. The tires were the whole thing. And Don Garnett's and all the big name guys, they got free tires, but they got the tires that we couldn't buy. So I said, I'm done. You know, we can't compete. You know, so we quit. And then about 5 years later, I started racing boats, and I'm still racing boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From land to water, any form of racing for you.
Yeah, we race a boat called a cracker box. It's a little
Okay.
16-foot boat that 2 people ride in it. And I never drove them, I just built the motors. And I'm still doing that.
What a wonderful story. Thank you very much for your time. We're
Sure.
really glad to learn so much
I'll
more
drop
about
by
that.
a license plate or a couple of trophies from Santa Ana. I think I might have 3 or 4 left, because we got 50 cents for them. Turn them back in, you know. It was a matter of fact that I was going to get one every week. You know, that's how you think when you're that age,
Right.
you know. But,
That's,
well, I hope I answered all your questions.
yes, certainly did. Thank you.